Good afternoon, parents. I just wanted to communicate today about the reading fluency homework that was sent home today. I know that some of you were exposed to this during the parent back to school meeting where I briefly showed you what this homework looked like. And I just wanted to go over it in a little more depth and detail and just give you a refresher about what you should be doing with this homework. So the homework looks like this. You're going to be sent home a passage, a short passage, and along the side of the passage will be numbers. The numbers along each side show a total count of the words up until that point. So for example, the first line in this passage has 12 words, and then the first two lines combined have 21 words, and so on. The purpose of this homework is to give students practice with their reading fluency. That means the accuracy that they read with and the pace of their reading, as well as their expression when they're reading and how smoothly they're reading. So there are a couple things to keep in mind. First and foremost is the number of correct words that a student is reading. So are they reading words correctly? The second thing to take into account is how quickly they're reading. A good goal for our students right now is around 75 words per minute. Some students, though, may be at just starting this level, so maybe they are trying for 45 or 55 words per minute, and some students may be a little bit higher and reading about 100 words per minute, but generally the expectation is around 75 words per minute. Now, in addition to this, students shouldn't be reading too fast because they should be taking into account punctuation as they read. That means pausing for a comma or an end punctuation mark, like a question mark, an exclamation point, or a full stop at the end of a sentence. It also means the expression that they're reading with. So are they reading bland and flat and monotone, or do they have elevation and dips in their voice as they read to show the meaning of the text? These are all things to be considering when they're practicing their reading fluency, and they're all things that I look for when I'm assessing them on reading. So this is just a way for you to practice these things with them at home. So what you're going to be doing with your child is having them read to you the passage out loud for 1 minute. As they read, you're going to be taking account of how many mistakes they make when they're reading. And then at the end of that 1 minute, you're going to mark down how many words total they've read. So for example, if maybe they are reading this passage and they come to this line where it says the phonograph was, but maybe they don't get to this sentence. They stop at the word home. I can look over here and see that 78 is at the end of this line, but they haven't read the last 3 words of the line. So I'm just going to subtract the last 3 words and say that they've read 75 words total for this minute. Okay? Once the minute's up, you're going to go to the bottom of the homework sheet. At the bottom, we can see a daily record. Today would be day 1. So for total words read in 1 minute, I would write down 75. Then I'm going to think about how many mistakes my child has made. I'm going to write the number of mistakes on this line. And then I'm going to subtract the number of mistakes from the total and get their total words read correctly in 1 minute. And then you would just sign with your initials. There's also some comprehension questions on the back. So if you flip over to the back, the students have 4 days of comprehension questions, day 1, day 2, day 3, and day 4. So on day 1, they would focus on the first box of comprehension questions. Something else that I like about this homework is that it typically has some parent tips on the comprehension side of the homework. Since this is the first sheet, you may just see directions of how to complete these sheets, but as more sheets come, you will see that there are some parent tips. Here's an example. So this parent tip is focusing on how punctuation influences the way that your child should be reading. So we can see there are some tips like point out places where the author describes how a character speaks. Ask your child to read aloud as if he or she were giving a talk or performing a play. Okay, so it can give you some tips to help make your child a more fluent and engaging reader, which will definitely help them when we do our reading assessments. Okay, so I actually just wanted to do an example of this, and I'm very lucky because Miss Katie has volunteered to be the student. So she's going to be reading for 1 minute straight, and I'm going to just keep a tally on the side of any mistakes that she makes, and then I'll show you how we would calculate overall for how many words she's read correctly in that minute. Okay, so I'm just setting up a timer on my phone for 1 minute, and Miss Katie's going to read the passage for 1 minute, and I've instructed her to just make a couple mistakes so that way you guys can see me telling the mistakes so you have an idea of what you should be doing as you're listening to your child read. Okay, so Miss Katie, whenever you're ready, you can begin reading and I'll start the timer.
What do an elevator, a car, and a grocery store have in common? If you answer that there is usually music playing in all of those places, you are right. And it wasn't always so easy to listen to recorded music anywhere and everywhere. Let's go back to 1877 when Thomas Edison invented the phonograph. Before this.
Okay, so the timer is up and Miss Katie stops reading at the word before. Okay, so what I'm going to do is look to the right side. I can see the line before that, there were 54 words up until that point, and she read 2 more words, 54, 55, 56. So now I'm going to go down to the bottom of the sheet, and I'm going to write 56 words for how many words that she read. Okay, then I need to look back at her mistakes. Overall, I tallied 5 mistakes, so I'm going to write 5 for the number of mistakes. And some of them were simple mistakes, just maybe with saying let instead of let's, or listen instead of listen. But nevertheless, they're still mistakes. They're not saying the words correctly, so they still count. Okay, and then after that, I'm going to subtract the number of mistakes from the total words that were read correctly, and these are the total words that she read correctly in 1 minute. And like I said before, for some of the lower students, 55 words in a minute is a good goal. But some of the students who are reading at, say, at level 16 right now should really be shooting for 75 words per minute. And the higher the level goes, the more words they should be reading in 1 minute. Something that Ms. Katie was doing right was she was reading quite slowly and taking her time. Some of the students choose to read very quickly, which causes them to make a lot of mistakes and makes them not read smoothly or with expression. So it can really go either way, where you're reading too slowly or too quickly, and those are 2 things that I would be on the lookout for when I'm seeing how many words your students have read. For example, if someone comes in with 130 words per minute on their page, I'm really going to question that because that tells me they're probably not reading smoothly. So that's just an example. After you read, your child's going to read by themselves the whole passage, and then they'll flip to the next page and read the directions for that day's question. So we can see for day 1 on this sheet, it says read the text, pay attention to the information that is new to you, write an exclamation point next to sentences that teach you something. So the student would go back to the passage and look for interesting sentences where they've learned something and make an exclamation point, maybe with a colored pencil or a regular pencil. And then they'll go back here and write down some of the things they learned. I learned blah, 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 blah. Okay, so fairly simple. If you have any questions, feel free to message me on Class Dojo regarding this. But I hope that these instructions helped you out a little bit. And I know that this reading fluency homework really does help. I used it in my class last year and I saw great results with it. So I'm really looking forward to you guys using it at home with your children. Thank you.